Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, where we provide world-class education, hope, and inspiration, and sometimes a few laughs as well. If you've watched Woman's Prerogative, you know what I'm talking about. I'm Dr. JACALYN KERBECK. I am your host for today. Our show is The Listening Mentor, and we are going to be diving into how to tune into life's wisdom. So if you ever watch this show, you know that I am not the star of this program. I am just the host. Our beautiful Harley Street stress expert, Caroline HEWARD from the United Kingdom. She's here to join us right now. Welcome.
Woohoo! Welcome. Welcome to all our viewers. And it's always lovely to be here with you, Dr. JACALYN. Always, especially on a Friday evening for me.
Thanks, Caroline. The intro is perfectly timed as the lawn mowing people were going by. So they came in, they went. Goodbye to them. So, Caroline, for people who haven't met you before, you do something very unique that is something that we all need. As you know, I've reached out to you on numerous occasions. You help people bust their stress. Tell us more.
I do, Dr. JACALYN. I help people literally bust their stress. How do I do that? Well, we're all walking around with symptoms, and it's whatever we're complaining about. And if you're not sure, if you're saying that you're stressed, or you're saying you're not stressed, but you don't sleep at night, you have a physical ache and pain, knee pain, back pain, throat problems, hair loss, if you have an emotional issue in terms of sadness, loneliness, or if you have depression, anxiety, or if you're complaining about that relationship, or if there's been a bereavement, it's whatever you're complaining about, what fills your space and what's your conversation. That's the imbalance, that's your stress. And I help you bust through that symptom. And I identify the root cause and working with your blueprint of what's causing your problems, literally finding the root cause using root cause therapy. My training is in chakra psychology, and I've been doing this work for over 2 decades. And I literally in that call, I offer a free consultation on Zoom, Skype, or Messenger, audio, video, and if you're camera shy, on call. And I bust through one symptom. Obviously, you've got tons of other symptoms that you're walking around with, and then I offer programs to help you literally break through all of your symptoms. So you can reach me on nomorestress at live.co.uk, or call on +44 if you're international, 07523 120 189. I look forward to helping you bust your stress.
Bust your stress. Bust your stress and get some rest. How about that? Okay, so I want to talk about wisdom, specifically life's wisdom. And we know that saying, I know you're very big on quotes, but this particular one is, if only I knew then what I know now. And we can't.
No, we can't. That's in hindsight. If we're always looking back, if I knew then what I know now, but you can only go forward from that. You can't complain about the past. That's a learning, and that's wisdom. So if you've gained that wisdom, next time that situation happens, you do know, and it's about moving forward with that wisdom.
Absolutely. And part of what I want to talk about is when we're younger, we take risks. I'm not saying that people don't take risks as they get older, but for the people that I've known and for myself, you think that you're indestructible and you're not as preoccupied with your health probably. And you speak all the time about babies, how they're so curious and they're wonderful and they're just looking around and they're not intimidated. But as we get older, certain things happen. And I was thinking to myself, this is my 60th year. Actually, I'm 60 and a half, which is crazy. But
Woo-hoo. Looking good.
Thank you. And in the same year, my mother passed away. So I've had a lot of time to reflect about life's journey. And I feel that I'm so different now than I was even 6 months ago. And I don't know how I feel about it. I feel like I'm much wiser, but I don't feel like I'm having as much fun. So what do you think? Do they go together, wisdom and fun?
Yeah, they do, because I feel that as you get older, you become more competent and comfortable to be yourself. Whereas when we're younger, we're generally, depending on the person, the type of person you are, trying to fit in and still working stuff out. But as we get older, we've learned a lot of wisdom along the way in terms of our years. And so then we make decisions based on what we prefer, what we like, rather than fitting in. And so from that place, there is much more feeling comfortable in your skin. Whereas opposed to when you're younger, it's, sort of you're more likely to try and fit in or try and do the right thing or conform, unless you are an unconformist. So yes, I would agree that the older you get, the more relaxed you are. And I'm certainly more relaxed now about being myself rather than trying to be what I think somebody else wants me to be.
Absolutely. And our other friends and colleague here on this network, Kim Adele Randall, she's in the UK. I don't know if you know her, but we were speaking about this morning. And it is interesting as we get older, at least the two of us and her, that we three of us, that you start to look at things a little bit differently and you're not so concerned about what other people think. It's more about what you need, when you need it, how you need it, and just showing up for yourself. And I feel in terms of wisdom, at least from when I was younger, I always needed external validation. I needed someone to give me that pat on the back or say, we love you, or you're great, but now I love myself and I'm comfortable knowing that. How do you feel?
I'm exactly the same as you, Dr. JACALYN. I would totally agree with you. And in fact, one of my very good friends, she turned around to me and she pinpointed, she said, you don't ask for approval anymore. And it was something that she noticed that I didn't realize, that I stopped needing to ask, what do you think about this? If I did that, what do you reckon? Do you think that's a great idea? Or do you think that would be the right way to go? I would always be seeking approval to make sure that I didn't make a mistake, and almost making somebody else responsible for some of the things that I did. And there was a point, and I can't remember when it was, but one of my very close friends turned around and said, it's really interesting. You just don't seek approval anymore. You don't ask me anymore. And I said, no, because I know what I want to do. And it was different to what most people around me were doing. So I was going outside of my sphere of peers, friends, and colleagues, and work colleagues to do different things. And so there was a different place for me to reach out to in terms of what I was doing, and it was different, and I felt better in literally doing what felt right for me.
I love that, Caroline. And you know what else I want to discuss with you, because we talk about elevated listening, we talk about how to have better relationships. Now I'm highly aware. I don't do it on purpose. I just have this sense that when somebody starts to tell me what they think I should do, and it happens all the time. People just, you're having a conversation and bam, there they go. Well, I think that's ridiculous. I think you should do this. If it were me, I would do that. And I'm so keenly aware of it, but I don't react, because I think to myself, They don't know how to listen at an elevated level, but there's still an opportunity for them to learn, but I'm not going to engage. As a professional, as an expert, as a certified therapist, how do you advise people to handle that when someone is telling them what they need to do or problem solving?
Well, I frequently, when somebody asks me, what do you think I should do? I frequently say, it's not my place to tell you what to do. So when somebody is giving you what to do, then it's confrontational, because it might not be what you want to do. And the thing is, one of my mentors, sort of a couple of decades ago, when I first started doing this kind of work, he said something that really resonated with me, and it's always been with me, and it was an incredible piece of advice. And he said, I'm going to share some things with you, some things that you may agree with completely and love, some things that you kind of think, where's he coming from on that? And some things that you're going to go, no, I don't agree with that, and I'm not going to do that. And he says, what I want you to do is take what you like, leave what you're not sure about, and completely bin, trash what you don't want to look at ever again. He said, because this is my perspective from my world, and I'm sharing with you my gifts and my understanding and my knowledge, but you will have different gifts to share and different understanding and different knowledge. But here I am sharing what I have, and I want you to take what feels good for you and trash what doesn't feel good for you, and keep in storage what you might want to go back to later. And I've felt that that's a really good piece. So then you're not in judgment. Then you're sort of saying, well, okay, that person's giving me the best of their ability in terms of their knowledge and their understanding from their perspective. And that's the key. It's from their perspective, not yours.
Absolutely brilliant. I agree with you totally. And something I just want to highlight there is when we do give unsolicited advice, if we're not a professional, for example, it's a friend to friend or family member to family member. Oh, I knew he was no good. I told you you should break up with him. And then they get back together and they remember that you said that he was no good. Or let's say that you tell someone how to fix the plumbing and then the pipe breaks and then it's a disaster. Well, it's your fault because you told me to do X, Y, Z. This happens all the time.
Yes, unfortunately. And it is important to hear what somebody has to say, ask for advice. People that are good and that are expert in what they do, they love being asked for advice. And so I usually turn to experts or people that are knowledgeable. And so I've been needing a handyman for a little while now, and to put up mirrors and things, sort of those handyman type jobs. And I've gone over referrals, because it's not, from that perspective, a workman is only as good as the referrals that come from him. So I've gone with referrals, and those people that have been referred to me haven't come back to me. Maybe they're really busy because it's been during the summertime. And so as a consequence of that, I went to somebody who did some work for me and did an incredible job. And I reached out and said, I wondered if you could recommend any handymen to do mirrors and fixings and general handyman work. And so he came back and he said, yes, I can recommend someone. And so then I've asked, and he very gleefully came back and said, I'll find the number and I'll give you the details. And so that's when it's not, it is solicited. I've asked because I want the benefit of somebody else's expertise, knowledge, and recommendation and referral. Sometimes somebody steps into the place and gives it to you without you even needing it. Now, some people could have said, oh, I can recommend somebody, and I might already have someone. So that's what the difference is. And it's about being aware. I frequently ask good people, can you recommend somebody to do X, Y, and Z? And the reason I do that is because people love to help.
They absolutely do. How about this one? Caroline, when I was your age, I ... Meaning I did it a different way. I don't know why you're doing the way you're doing, because that's not the way I did it.
Well, we live in changed times, don't we? When I was that age, I remember, and I'm going to share something that will really show my age, is that the TV only had 3 channels, and the remote control was the children switching over the channel. It wasn't a remote control in terms of a gadget. It was the children actually getting up and switching over the channel. So I think that, you know, when somebody says that, we're talking from our own time and experience, and the world has changed drastically, radically, you know, even in the last 10 years, even in the last 5 years, it's changed. And so I think that when somebody does that, they're reminiscing that, you know, sort of as my middle brother has said to me, children are in a very different experience now to when we were children. And I found that that was really insightful.
I have a big smile back here thinking about those days with the television, and they had the rabbit ears, and it was black and white, and you literally got up and changed the dial.
And they were huge, weren't they? They were huge as in they had a lot of back to them. They weren't flat.
I hate to say it, but we have one right here. It's not from that time frame, but it's I don't even know what kind of TV it is, but it is an enormous back one. It's so heavy. Whereas the TVs today, you know, you could do weightlifting. They're just so light. It's crazy.
That's how technology has changed us. That's how, you know, when I was a child, it was the Barbie doll, you know, and the Action Man for the boys. And, you know, it was Tiny Tears was my favorite doll, a doll that cried, you know, and we were very imaginary. You know, in today's current times, our children are on little on iPhones and little tablets and laptops, and I find it like, I'm just thinking that, you know, it's very expensive now to have a child, you know, to give them all the tech kit that they are used to having than what we had. You know, it was a much less interaction and much more imagination when we were children.
I was just thinking to myself, I never heard of Tiny Tears. Why would anyone want a doll that cries? I think there should be dolls that smile.
Well, it was like sort of, you know, it was kind of children wanting babies, you know, and babies cry. And so this was like sort of, you know, so we had there was a pushchair and, you know, all the dolls' clothes, and it was so that you would nurse it, you know. It was just imaginary stuff. But yeah, Tiny Tears cried. And Barbie doll would have lots of different outfits, you know, so you could dress her up in the latest fashion. But, you know, nowadays it's all on tech, and there's less of that imaginary experience and much more of the technical experience. So being lost in a screen rather than actually playing with something physically.
It's amazing how Barbie has stayed around for all of these decades. I just bought a Barbie for my great niece, but it was a big Barbie head with all this different color hair, and then all of these things that you can brush her hair, part her hair, braid her hair, put these barrettes in her hair. Is a Barbie head. A giant head.
But this is what I mean about when people give the benefit of their advice. They're going from their childhood and their wisdom and their experience from their world, whereas your map of the world might have been very different when you were a child. And so we can't actually compare. We can only hear what the person has to say and then take a perspective, you know, of whether that's right for us to action, or whether it's, you know, sort of it's being given in good faith from the person, and then just to say, well, thank you very much for sharing that. That was the other piece I wanted to say, that I also learned from another mentor, that if there's something that somebody shares with you that you're not so sure about, or it's not really right, that you would always thank them. And the words were, thank you for sharing. and I used to think, well, I somehow felt that it was a bit uncomfortable to say that. So I would always say, thank you. That was really interesting to hear your perspective. And I think that's a much softer way. I just found that, thank you for sharing. I'm not sure how that landed, if you know what I mean. But, sort of my words are, that's a really interesting perspective. Thank you for sharing your perspective on that situation.
And that's a great way to validate that you heard what someone said without making a judgment about it.
Yeah, because everybody's coming from a different place. We all see different things through different filters. So I do like to check in with what other people think about a situation or their thoughts, because we're all coming from very different places, different understandings, insights, and knowledge. And so, yes, it's always useful to do that. Sometimes I just have my world and my decision, and I just go for it, and other people will share what they think. But I've frequently had people that have shared what they think, and it's not what I think, and I've just gone ahead and done it my way anyway. I think that'll be one of my songs. I did it my way.
I think that one's taken already, but that's okay. You can have your own version after busting.
Absolutely. I did it my way, but I did it Caroline's way.
I wanted to go on to something that when I was growing up, somebody would say, when you get old, you're going to be very wise. And you would imagine that the older generation, the traditionalists, or maybe the high end of the boomers, now I'm a boomer, that those people were wise because they had so many experiences in life. And then when I was in my corporate career, younger people were being put into these positions of power and leadership. And I remember that some people the same age as myself, when I was in corporate, they really struggled because they thought that this younger person didn't have the knowledge or the wisdom that an older person. How many times you were in corporate, I was in corporate, would you go to meet a client, or there was some kind of interaction with somebody on your team, and the person was much older. They had been with the company for a long time. They were in their 70s and they earned the right to be whatever the title was. And then all of a sudden that person's replaced with a much younger person in their 20s or their 30s. So what is the definition of wisdom then?
Oh, that's a really, really interesting story, because I had the same when I worked in marketing and PR. In getting into it after I got my qualification, then I was struggling to get experience, and so I was walking around with a portfolio of things that I'd done in terms of my charity type work, my unpaid work, getting work that way, because I was generally working on projects, and so there were contract type projects, beginning, a middle, and end. I worked at the sexy end, and so I was working very hard to build up my expertise and my experience, which I did really well. I worked on some very sexy projects, some very big companies, and I really loved it. And I worked agency side quite a lot, which always had a really good mix. And then there was a point that I would go for interviews, and somebody would say, "Whoa, your CV reads like a who's who. We couldn't afford you. We couldn't keep you busy. We couldn't keep you occupied. You'd be off in a hop, skip, and a jump. You wouldn't stay because you'd be bored," because they'd looked at my CV. And so I went through that experience of, being interviewed by people that were at least a decade to 2 decades younger than me. And they were feeling threatened by me in terms of when I was in a role or when I was applying for a role. So it's absolutely, where is the line? Certainly in the end of marketing and PR that I was in, it was the very glamorous end, and I milked it, and I did well in it. But it had a timing in terms of how long you could be in that side of the industry. I wished I was get better on the tech, but I wasn't. I was the glamour puss on the advertising and the radio and the TV stuff and the campaigns. That's where I was good. And that's a much younger person's role. And so I was always competing with much younger people. But, I had skills in that area.
You definitely had a lot of skills and a lot of success and a glamorous life. We've talked about it before, and you have a lot of wisdom in many different areas. So wisdom is not directly related to age, is it?
No, it isn't, because you can be very wise being very young. And, you can be a wise child. There are many children that I speak to, sort of that have just left school, for instance, who sound very wise for their years, much wiser than I was. When I just left school, I was still reading Jackie, which was a magazine that was, teaching girls how to kiss. So that was at 16.
I've never heard of this.
Yeah, Jackie was it was the magazine, the girls magazine that, sort of, if you didn't know how to it was just like sort of the mag for, teenage girls. And it was the magazine that was out for all girls of that age, and it was an established magazine for young girls wanting to know how to do things. And so there were Jackie stories. It was a really, very innocent time, where in the problem page people would be asking, my boyfriend wants to kiss me, how do I kiss him? I can't imagine a 16-year-old asking that now. It's just a totally different world.
Yeah, now you can just go to various social media, like YouTube, I imagine. I've never done it, but I imagine they'll give you a whole overview how to do it.
Absolutely. It was a very innocent time at that time.
Very different times. I think over here it was Cosmo magazine, Cosmopolitan. I don't even know if they're still around. So, Caroline, we've just clarified that you don't have to be a specific age to be wise. Can you lose your wisdom?
Yeah, sure. If you're unwell, if there's sickness. So, for instance, there is an onslaught. There is many people that are suffering with things like dementia, Alzheimer's. So you actually almost revert back to being the child again and relearning or not remembering everything. And sometimes some people, when they get to a certain age, they sort of switch off. They stop living and they become very automated in what they do, and so everything becomes more routine. And so from that place you can lose wisdom, because you're on what I would call autopilot, going through the motions without the emotion, and in a routine that can become very dull and not actually gaining new experiences and experiencing from that place of wisdom. For myself, I'm actually a forever student. I've been studying ever since I left school, and I'm still studying now. And that keeps me fresh, that keeps me youthful, that keeps my energy youthful, because I'm always learning new things. But some people stop. And when they stop, they start to become stagnant. And from that place of being stagnant, then there's less wisdom.
Very, very true. Very true. And is it possible that people can pick up a book called Wisdom for Dummies and start studying how to be wise?
Well, yeah, there's a lot on YouTube, and there's a lot, online, and a book. But, it depends on how interested that each person is to explore those avenues. Whenever I hear a word that I've not heard before, and it's some, ultra modern, way of saying something, especially, when I'm watching something, a movie, and I haven't got a clue what the word means that they've said, I'll go and look it up. What does this mean? I've heard young people saying that's sick. And I'm just thinking, well, what do they mean by that? That's sick. That actually was a good thing, that I've just seen happen. And it's the slang that's now being used. And, we all have in our different generations, terminology and slang that we use. So I'm forever looking it up. So yes, I guess that you could look up in a book, Wisdom for Dummies, and I'm sure it'd have all the answers there if you were so inclined to look up in a book.
That's good news for everybody. There's still time.
Absolutely. And I'm sharing my knowledge all the time. I'm always in my shows, I share from a place of expertise, knowledge, experience, and wisdom. because we don't know what we don't know. And so why should we know everything? And I've learned a lot, in the last couple of decades that I didn't know before. In fact, in 2006, I learned how to change a light bulb. And that was the first time that I'd ever changed a light bulb, because there was always a man or brother, my dad, my brothers, or my then husband to always change those things. And I never had to learn. And so I did have a very, very dear friend that taught me how to change a light bulb. And I was in my early 40s at the time. So, it took me a long time to learn, but I didn't need to learn because there was always somebody around that did it. So I learned something.
It's so true, Caroline. I think in the last 3 years, I've learned more than I have the rest of my life.
You've done all sorts of incredible things. I can't believe how much you've achieved, writing books and developing a broadcast, a very successful channel. It's just incredible, because I've been part of your journey for the last 2 years, and it's been absolutely tremendous, what I've seen and how you've developed and grown, and what we're doing now is absolutely amazing. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. And of course, I learned so much from you. And this platform is about education. And as Roland, one of our team members and friends, always says, sharing is caring, caring is sharing. And that's what we do here. We give back to help other people. One thing I'm wondering is, and other people out there might be wondering this as well, when we make a mistake, or when we hurt someone, or we do something that wasn't the best decision, can we be redeemed? Can we overcome, or what's the word? We can't undo what we did, but is there a way that we can bring value in that same area, that people can trust us again and go, okay, well, that person messed up, but I guess they've learned, and now they have more wisdom from the learning.
Exactly that. And that's a really good example, because we're human, and we're here to learn, to evolve, and to have a human experience. And of course, to error is to be human. And so we're going to make mistakes. That's just normal. That's part of being a human being. And so when we do make a mistake, I feel that the grown-up thing to do is to admit the mistake. If you've broken something, or if you've not done something, or if you've missed a deadline, rather than sort of creating all the excuses of somebody else's problem, say, what, I made a really big mistake on that, and I'm sorry, to actually apologize, to admit the mistake, to apologize, and then to look inside and say, what would I do differently? And, even I make mistakes. I'm not perfect. And I always look at, okay, then I made a mistake this time. So what would I do differently? What can I do next time so that I don't have this experience? And I always look at that, because that's the learning. And that's when you reflect on the learning, it moves into wisdom rather than being the mistake. And so it's actually much kinder to make a mistake, because that's where your wisdom and your growth comes from.
Excellent points, as always. Caroline, I think what would be helpful also for our audience is if they can understand when your wisdom or your knowledge, your expertise is questioned by someone. So you're seen as the expert, but then people start to pick away at that for whatever reason, because maybe they feel that they have expertise and there's not enough room for two people to have expertise, which of course is interesting to think that way. What can one do in that case?
Well, that's competition, isn't it? that's when somebody feels that you're in competition. So they're living in scarcity. So that they're living in a place of separateness. So they feel, if they're feeling uncomfortable with you, or having a grievance with you, and diminishing you, that's their stuff. It's not yours. That's their inadequacy. And that's coming out as, so underneath the behavior, that will be jealousy.
And jealousy is one of those lower vibrations. Yes.
Yeah. And there is that, we're human. So we do experience things like that. Sometimes I will say something like, oh, I feel well jealous of your holiday, or I'm really jealous, you've got this amazing opportunity. But it's said in like a tongue-in-cheek way, rather than saying, I'm really jealous of you because you look like you're better than me, you've got more fans than me, but actually, we're both the same. And it's a different connotation, isn't it? So when somebody says, I feel really jealous of you, I feel really green with envy that you've got this coveted award, that's a different space from saying, of being jealous, showing the jealousy without actually owning it.
So true. And something else that just comes to mind is when you are an expert, as you are, you don't have to market yourself in a way that another might, because other people will market you because you've helped them.
That's exactly what happens. Yes. When I love doing this type of show, because I'm not on a little Facebook Live saying, hey, look at me, I'm an expert. And I want you to listen to me because I say I'm an expert. And I think that comes from my marketing and PR background, that it's much better to be on a platform where someone else is actually positioning you as an expert, rather than me saying I'm an expert, which I am saying I am, but I'm being positioned on various platforms and in front of different audiences, that it's not my platform. I'm actually with you on your platform. And so it actually has more credibility and more kudos if somebody else is shining the light saying that you're an expert, which is why I love to work on these kind of platforms, because I'm meeting all sorts of other experts that are in different professions of expertise. And at the same time, I'm coming together with peers and colleagues and sharing that space with other people that have expertise in their own area.
So true. And I think that's something that people miss when it comes to networking, for example. And this isn't about networking, but it's about wisdom. It's about promoting someone else. It's about how can you bring value to someone else as opposed to me, 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 me.
Mm. And it's very, when you're giving, when you're openly giving, and one of my promoters actually dropped me a message. I used to be on I was on his stages before the world changed in 2020. And he dropped me a message, a catch-up message saying, hi, how are you? He's just had an event. And then he said, I've seen all your posts, you're doing really well. It sounds like, things are going well for you. I'm trusting that you've got lots of clients. And he was kind of really being very jovial. And he said, because that's what it's all about. And I thought that it was really lovely, because it was an endorsement, from him saying, yeah, I'm seeing what you're up to. It looks really exciting. I'm really pleased for you. And so he's an expert in his field and I'm an expert in mine. And what's happened is that we've come together because there's a shared common goal, that he's good at what he does, I'm good at what I do, and we've come together. And that's how we're together, because I value other people's expertise. And I love the fact that I tend to have people around me that are very much more technical than me, and I'm very respectful of their expertise and love the fact they are, because I know that I'm not as competent on the tech side as what other people are that I surround myself with.
And you really have mastered technology in so many ways, and I'm so proud of you for that. And by the way, I apologize for the knocking. There's a giant iguana headed towards the studio window.
Oh my gosh.
I forgot to put myself on mute. Like, that's
viewers, people that are watching, Dr. JACALYN showed me one of her friends that have been visiting, and it's a huge 5-foot iguana.
Let me get the picture.
When she showed me, I nearly died.
It's pretty big. I feel like they're taking over. It's incredible. And the homeowners association said they can't do anything about it. So you have to call wildlife and whatever. They're all over the place. They're all over. And the reason that I even bring it up is because the little creatures leave their little gifts everywhere. So it's not very
What kind of gift do they leave?
Well, by the way, on our next show, Coexistence and Sustainability, Pet Psychic Am and I, we talk about this on a regular basis. People think that when they take their dogs for a walk and they don't pick up, that it just disintegrates, and it doesn't. If the sun beats down on it enough, it'll crack in, or the wind will blow it away. But these little creatures, they're not little, they leave gifts, and the gifts just sit there. They're the gifts that keep on giving. So.
Well, we have in the UK a policy, I don't know what you'd call it, a sort of a community thing where you have to scoop up your poops, your dog's poops. And I can't think what it's called, but it's like sort of a common law thing, I think it is, where essentially you're supposed to be carrying bags with you to scoop up your pet's poops.
Well, I'm going to suggest that we have a training seminar for these iguanas. I'll lead. I'll say, okay, iguanas, you're going to have to use your little claw hands to pick up whatever.
They're just being totally iguana-ish.
Exactly, totally rude. Well, I imagine because they're mowing the lawn in the common areas, they're displaced, so they have to run around and do whatever they're doing. But anyway, I digress. Caroline, you are going to be joining us for A Woman's Prerogative on Monday, and then you're going to be co-hosting for World Jenny's Day on Tuesday, and then, of course, coming back for Talking Heads as well on Tuesday. So before we say goodbye, I'd love if you would just share a little bit about your last Talking Heads episode about autopilot.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Dr. JACALYN. My last Talking Heads episode, I do my Talking Heads expert show on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. UK time and midday Eastern time. And my show on Tuesday was on the psychology of living on autopilot. And autopilot essentially is when life happens, things happen, and we've handled it logically, physically, practically, but things are difficult. And so we shut down the feelings and emotions. And when we shut down the feelings and emotions, which reside in the belly, we actually shut off our sensory experiences. And then we live from the neck upwards. So everything is what we think about and what we converse about and what we're in conversation about. And we don't actually feel our sensitivity in the body. And so we'll feel almost like we're on autopilot or going through the motions without the emotion. And there's points where you will feel almost like you're just in a robotic fashion, living and existing rather than living. You're in an existence every day rather than actually experiencing life. And I talk a lot about that and things that you can actually experience in terms of changing living in autopilot. And it happens to anyone and everyone that has had experiences in their life that are difficult, that we just shut down the feelings and emotions. So do check out that episode, because you'll be surprised how many people fall into that space without even realizing it until they're kind of in their 40s or 50s, and they feel they're in a midlife crisis because they didn't realize that was how they were living. So I think that Tuesdays 5 o'clock will be a good time for you to log in. And if you miss the live, then you can always catch up on the live recording on YouTube.
Thank you so much, my dear friend. It's been a pleasure having this conversation about the journey of wisdom with you. And I'm super excited to see you again on Monday. Any big plans for the weekend?
I have quite a bit of bookkeeping to sort out, and I have a submission to make for my marketing work. So it's going to be a bit of an admin weekend because I've been avoiding it. So I have to do an admin weekend and be staring at the computer. But as apart from that, it's going to be gloriously sunny here, so I'm going to miss out on some sunshine as well.
Oh, boo. I forget it's usually dark and damp, isn't it?
Yes, it is here. I'm actually sitting in a blanket because it's quite cool here in the evening.
So funny. And I haven't been out. It is, but I'm looking at the sun. It is so hot today. I think it's close to 90 and the iguanas keep coming in. It's like a party they're having out there. So, they only like hot weather. So that's the point. It's interesting.
I'm coming over. I'm coming over.
Come on over. I'd love to have you over. We'll do the show in person.
Sounds good to me.
Well, we'll make it happen one day for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, Caroline and I are saying goodbye, and Pet Psychic Amina, I will be saying hi. So do stay with us. Go over to our YouTube channel, which is USA Global TV and Radio, and please do reach out to Caroline. If you want to bust your stress and have a better life, do it now. No more stress at live.co.uk. How about that? All right, there we go. We'll see you again soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Have a lovely weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.